Well, let's kick this off. We could keep it very short today. We have a couple of things to go over, and then yeah, we can get back to business today. We'll keep it short. I think we have a couple of launches that have happened over the past few days, or really a week or so that we can walk through, including like IPX stuff, fee switch stuff. So to start, we will do the Dinero ETH tokamak launch. So I don't think we covered this on the last call, but for those who are keeping up, we partnered with tokamak on this pretty cool Dinero ETH product that basically helps create demand for the PX ETH side of things. And basically how it works is they kind of similar to what they were doing before. They aggregate all of the PX ETH LP yield earning opportunities. People deposit ETH or PX ETH into this Dinero ETH product, and they sort of optimize the TVL to generate the best amount of yield. The other cool part about this is that they've thrown some additional toke incentives on top of this. So it looks like the base rate is 7%. And then right now there's an additional 5% that you can earn just from the token incentives they've added on top. I think since the launch, we're at about 3 million TVL, which is really good. And ideally, the more TVL we can get in this, the better, because demand side for PX ETH is good for keeping the yield side, the APX ETH side high. So the more TVL in here, the better. And if you're somebody interested in sort of more risk on yields, then this is a good product for you. I don't know if there's anything else to add on this. Good. Cool.
Yeah, I think I'll good.
Cool. So yeah, it's a pretty straightforward product, but cool nevertheless. I mean, this is another one of those things like having people build on top of PX ETH, and the system as a whole is a win for us. It's less that we have to worry about growing ourselves, and calling a Dinero ETH is always nice. Moving on, another integration that launched that is somewhat branded is the sort of Pod ETH launch. Admittedly, I don't know much about P-Pod, so maybe Funky, you're a better candidate to describe this, or Sammy, I'll let you guys take this particular integration.
I think Sammy's probably best place here.
Sammy, show the P-Pods.
Yeah, P-Pods is very simple. They do this yield strategy called volatility farming. What volatility farming is basically taking in single site assets, and then like their underlying tech is just recognizing when one asset is depegged on an LP versus like another LP, right? So if there's a world where one asset is getting like very aggressively swapped in an LP, then it'll depeg compared to what its actual like true price is. And Peapods just like hops around from like pool to pool and like recognizes that like arbitrage. That's like the basis of it. So it's a great integration for PXETH because there's so many like PXETH pools that are on like mainnet, and a lot of curve pools, and then there's even some cross chain pools like Velodrome and stuff. And like with this, you can leverage that like unique yield that comes up. That's not like the typical curve yield, or that's not the typical yield that exists within like when you think about like farming PXETH pools. So it's a cool new liquidity sink, and we've been like working together with them for a long time, trying to figure out what to do together. And I think this integration is pretty cool.
Cool. So yeah, and it's also something, I think like people have been asking for it for a long time. I think we've been talking to them about it for a long time, so it's good to finally get it out.
One cool thing about Peapods is that their TVL is pretty volatile. Like sometimes they're doing very good, sometimes they're not doing so good. But what we're actually launching with them is something called Pod ETH. It's kind of like a branded LST, but not exactly. So one of the things that you have to do with Peapods in order to recognize the yield is actually pair it against ETH or something, right? And you have to pair against like the PP asset against ETH or Ohm. The Ohm was the first one they did. And what's cool about our integration is that actually people can pair against Pod ETH now, so that any TVL that goes through Peapods will actually be will have the opportunity to be paired against PXETH. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Good tech. So check it out, and if people have questions, just drop them in the Discord. We'll work with their team to get them answered, and I think we'll put out some stuff on like how to actually use P-pods and stuff like that in the near future. That way we can kind of bootstrap that particular pod. Moving on, we also launched a new Dinero pool on Ink, the L2, where we have IE, the branded LST. I don't know, Funky, do you want to show the new Velodrome pool, what that's all about?
I mean, I think a lot of you are familiar with ETH. ETH is our most popular branded LST by number of users. I think we have like more than 35,000 people who've minted ETH. So quite a popular token to mint, even if the amount people are minting is smaller. But it's kind of where targeting is users of all sizes. And what was really good about this pool we have on Velodrome is that the Velo team is trying to like bootstrap pools there, so we're getting some free votes and working with the Ink team to kind of grow ETH further. But this Velo pool basically helps provide liquidity for users who may be trying to quickly convert their ETH back to ETH or even acquire some ETH themselves.
Nice. Yeah, and any plan for ETH pool with incentives from Ink? So I think Ink is very much still in a phase where they're trying to like bootstrap their ecosystem. What that looks like is somewhat TBD, but yeah, we're talking to them about growth opportunities and kind of like the future of the chain. I know they've been working to bring more DeFi protocols over, so I think they're in a position where they're probably going to want to do some more stuff to try to compete with Base and some of these other L2s that are in their category. So we'll see how it goes. But
I think the way that they're doing these kind of campaigns is that there is a perhaps expectation there'll be an Ink token one day. They haven't really told us anything, but yeah, there's no way for Ink to kind of incentivize because they don't have any explicit points program or token. So at this point in time, it's kind of like just kind of like a marketing thing for us where more people can experience branded LCs and stuff.
Yep. Okay, moving to the next pool related thing. So I'll have to tap you again, Funky, but some of you noticed the the tweet we put off the Dinero account that was part of this like onboarding process for the Berachain reward vault. So just for context, we tweeted that we submitted a reward vault request for WETH and Bera ETH on Bex with the incentive token Dinero. So maybe Funky, you could fill the gaps here on like what we've been up to on the POL games side of things.
For sure. I think there's been a lot of questions around there. A lot of questions. So right now I think there's like 6 pools on all of Berachain that receive BGT emissions. And it's kind of like I think there's like a Honey, USDC, Honey, BYUSD, and then some like Rapid Bera vaults pools. And so the governance kind of system in Berachain is still kind of being launched. So right now they're at what they call phase 0, and later phases the kind of governance process will be a bit more formalized and decentralized, which will allow kind of other pools on Bex and other protocols to receive BGT emissions. And I mean, Sammy can correct me if I'm kind of speaking ill here, but the way that BGT emissions will work in the future is that basically Bera validators basically emit BGT, and then users or protocols will be able to kind of influence where those BGT are directed through bribes. So it's kind of like Curve/Convex games, where emissions of Curve and Convex are like directed through kind of like votes and bribes, something we're very kind of familiar with. But at this stage, they've opened applications for whitelisting of Bex pools or Bex vaults. And so we've applied for 2, I guess. Yeah, we've applied for the Bera ETH WETH pool on Bex, and then we've also applied for a Dinero Bera pool on Bex as well. So we're working with the Bera team closely to kind of answer their questions and hopefully get whitelisted there so that we can kind of start the pre-order games and benefit from BGT missions.
Yeah, and it's pretty good because it looks like a lot of the initial like weird Barachain FUD narrative stuff has completely blown over. I think, whatever, people always FUD new chains, new dApps, things like this, and so especially if they have a lot of hype, and so it's been good to see all of that blow over. Community as strong as ever. TVL seems to be going up across the board, and of course, like Bera price recovering and stuff is also good for a lot of this POL sort of stuff and generating interest. So we're in a good spot on Barachain, especially as they start to open up the sort of like POL floodgates and we get to play a game I think we're pretty comfortable playing. Those applications, how long is the process? So I don't know if it's like I wouldn't say it's a super polished like process with a set time frame and stuff like that.
I think we're basically one of the first, if not the first, to have applied. So we're working closely with the team there as they get everything set up. I think there was a lot of questions in the Discord last week when the tweet came out about like the Boyko pools that we have or the Concrete Vault. So the Boyko pools and the Concrete Vault, they're deployed on Kodiak, and the Bex, or what they call Bera swap or whatever.
Bex now, like, yeah.
Yeah, Bex. Is it back to Bex?
Bex, then they changed it to Bera swap, and then they changed it back to Bex because I think there was like a Bera swap incident.
Hub.berachain, so it's like they don't even... Okay. So Bex is like the official DEX of Bera swap, so that's why like the BGT missions are there first. But once they do start whitelisting other protocols, we'll apply for the Kodiak pools. But the thing about the Kodiak pools already is that there were no like Boyko pools for Bex, but there were Boyko pools for Kodiak. So the Kodiak is already receiving Bera in the form of, I guess, the incentives for Boyko. But once the BGT games come to Kodiak, we'll be there as well for our main pool, but also our partner pools.
Cool. Yeah, and I think one other thing to bring up too is I know there have been a couple questions about like Monkey was saying about POL rewards going to Boyko people and stuff, and that is like one thing that's kind of more in the Foundation's wheelhouse because they have to decide how quickly they want to open the sort of like POL floodgates, and so yeah, if those protocols that are underlying the Boyko vaults end up getting BGT emissions, then depositors to Boyko can also get those. Once more get whitelisted, do you feel that the BGT distribution will get diluted as there will be many, currently 5, and as such more difficult to get? I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, obviously the BGT distribution wouldn't be as concentrated as it is now because I believe the inflation is like capped at, what was it, 10% a year or something like this? Yeah. And so obviously that has to get distributed across a bunch of different protocols. But it's kind of similar to like Curve Wars, right? Where bribers or people who understand the game the most are set to benefit the most.
Yeah.
And also some of it we'll just have to see like how it plays out. It's hard to like predict.
I mean, I think the really good comparison is like Curve, because like I think it's similar but kind of different, the mechanism there. So like I guess you could think of like the BGT games on Bera are like similar to the Curve pool games on Curve, except it's on a chain level. So like I don't know how much emissions they're doing now, but I think if once there are more people fighting for those emissions, then it becomes more competitive. But I think at the beginning it'll be very fruitful for those who get there early and know how to play the games. And the size, like even though there might be more people fighting for, slices of the pie, as more people participate, it makes the like overall attractiveness of Bera like more interesting, because if you want to control the Bera emissions, you need to hold Bera, or bribe people who have that kind of Bera voting power. So that kind of makes it much more sustainable, and also will allow it to kind of grow. So I think it's kind of a really cool flywheel, which I think we can really tap into.
Yeah. With that in mind, longer term, do you think BGT would be better to farm now versus IBGT? No, I don't necessarily think so, right? It depends on what your end goal is and what you want to do with it. So if you're an individual farmer or even a protocol farming, it really depends on what your goal is with the BGT itself. So like for an individual farmer, for example, like you may be less interested in managing the BGT and having it tied to your address forever and things like that. And so IBGT could be a better option. Same for protocols. And so yeah, I think it'll be a mix, and it really just depends on personal preference. I don't think one is like explicitly better than the other. It really just depends on your use case. Yeah, IBGT for farming more Bera, suitable for those who want to. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Funky.
I'm not that familiar with the infrared, but I think for IBGT you don't get the voting power, right? I think that's for the.
So yeah, you don't get it, but you still benefit from the rewards, right?
Exactly.
So like you could stake it, and yeah, you're just letting infrared handle the like reward aggregation for you, basically.
Yeah, so it's like for a protocol for us, since we are interested in the voting power, then we'd probably stick with the BGT or get infrared tokens to. Just like how we have convex tokens.
Cool. So that's the Berachain update. More to come, definitely. And yeah, like I said, Berachain's in a really, really strong spot. Is performing well at the moment. So we'll definitely lean into that a bit going into the future. But the big announcement that a lot of people saw this week, I'm sure, is that IPX is officially live in both capacities. One, in a technical capacity, and then two, in that deposits are starting to actually flow in, and I'm sure some of you know where to track those, some of you don't, but we're working on a couple things to make that easier. That'll go out in the near future. But Sammy, I'll let you take the IPX ETH launch.
Yeah, so long time coming. This week we decided to, with the test deposit of roughly like $5 million, we decided to get ahead of it and announce it ourselves, just because the plan for the rest of the rollout includes like one other bigger deposit with another one of the partners, and we're coordinating PR and all of those other things to like go live and really start like the marketing for IPX ETH. I know that was one thing that a lot of people have been asking about. So that wasn't it, but we thought we would get ahead of the announcement because there was people talking about it and leaking it, and it would have just been a waste. So we announced that it went live, but in terms of like it being big and prominent and being everything we promised it to be, that will probably start like next week. It would have just been a waste if some of the tweets that we saw were like the main ways that people were getting this information that it went live. So we decided to get ahead of it on that front. But in terms of what it actually is, now that it's actually live, it's something, as you guys know, we've been working on for a very long time. The reason it took so long is because none of it was in our power to speed up. We've been working really closely with the relevant asset managers and custody partners and Galaxy and Laser to like, speed this along as much as possible. But there was just a ton of delays on their end just because of, a bunch of reasons. But I think now that the vehicle is actually live and ready to take in deposits, I know that the Laser sales team, which is the Laser sales team is bigger than our whole team in general, has like all the materials now to start reaching out to other new funds and family offices and all these different parties to get them onboarded. And we're working with potentially onboarding some other asset managers to like, expand the product reach. And I think it's just general, like very, very exciting times. for the project as a whole. I think like we enter this like new era now where it's like we get a bit more serious with what we're doing. We compete with some of the bigger names in the space. I know you guys can see like other LSD protocols and just staking solutions in general trying to get ahead of this, and working with like a player in the space like Galaxy that already has such a head start in terms of all of this, be our partner for this, just gives us all the more reasons to succeed. Just gives us all the more reasons to succeed and lets us tap into like new money that just wasn't available. And that was, I think, one of the main things that was like holding us back as a project was the fact that we were limited to such like a small user base. But now with like the branded LSTs coming up on like 50,000 unique users and wallets interacting with the protocol, we've tapped into the L2s. Now with IPX ETH Live and being able to use these like multi-million-dollar sales funnels and salespeople in our advantage, we tap into like even more potential users and capital, and things seem to be going as planned. So yeah, I'll leave it at that unless there's things other people want to talk about.
Yeah, we we had one question from Milk Trudge. So the question was like, how can IPX ETH compete with Lido V3? They have announced the ST vaults for institutions. So I think the high level I don't think they've released a ton of details on how they work. If they have, we haven't had the time to look at them yet. But I think there's multiple components to whether or not a product competes, especially on the institutional side, right? There's the infrastructure component, like can they actually onboard institutions in a compliant way? If yes, then it becomes a conversation about yield. And so Lido just can't win on yield. I mean, obviously they have reputation that could go a long way, but they also need to have some sort of like mechanism for onboarding this capital. I don't know if it's supposed to be a permissionless system or how that works. So ultimately we'll compete on yield, but like it is what it is, right? You're never going to enter a space where you have zero competition forever. That was never going to be the situation. So we compete on yield. When will IPX ETH deposits be displayed on the Dinero? Soon. We're working on all that stuff now. Is IPX ETH for staked ETFs a real potential? I'm not sure.
Maybe I'll add some
Yeah, go ahead.
on the Lido part. The Lido part is just a narrative play. There's no actual tech there. We're really not concerned about them at all. The reason that IPX ETH is a thing is because all the money in the staking pool, in an on-chain environment is like cannot be accounted for. Who is it that you're depositing with? You're gaining yield from someone else's deposit in an LST, and that works for all the on-chain users and branded LSTs and all that stuff, but it does not work for a like an institution, right? They need to know who's the other people involved in this fund, and they need sufficient rails to actually get onboarded with proper asset managers and not just like, hey, go find the ETH yourself. And Steth is just all of the things that we're not. I'm very confident that we're going to beat Steth in this vertical, just because there's no legal entity with Steth. And I heard you talked about like the ETF providers and stuff as well. We've talked with the same people that they're talking to, and there's just too many blockers for Steth to actually be like the asset here. There's no legal entity. There's no accountability on who the other people depositing in the funds are. There's no accountability on who the big Steth holders are. And I think that they just want to be in front of this as like a narrative. But in terms of who actually has the better solution, there's no one. It's not just that. There's no one on the market that has a better solution than us in terms of like institutional ETH and the way our product's been designed. And we have multiple different articles and docs explaining why the product is actually differentiated and not just like taking the exact same thing and putting institutional behind it, right? If we wanted to like do what Steth is doing, we could do it in a weekend, right? All they're doing is like working with a custody partner to just put Steth on a custody provider so that like the wallets themselves are like compliant, but the asset itself is still not compliant enough for all these big funds to get involved. So like I'm sure this Steth thing will come up again, so I'm happy to keep talking about it, but like the product does not even compete with us, just because we did months of R&D on this, and this is not what the institutions want.
Cool. So yeah, hopefully that answers that. I think a lot of the Lido stuff is, like Sammy said, just been narrative play, and it's been like that for months now. So we'll see. I mean, ultimately, like to echo what I had said a second ago, is just you're never going to be in a space where there's no competition forever, anyways. And so if they want to compete, they can compete, and we'll just see how it goes. Calling a broker and wired. So we are talking about, is Galaxy doing the work for that, or so our institutional partners do a lot of the shilling for the institutional stuff.
They do all of it, right? You guys can imagine IPX to be a system where it's like these multi-billion-dollar firms. You don't even have to imagine it. This is what the system is, right? It's multi-billion-dollar firms that are saying, "Hey, can we white label this solution from you guys?" And we say, "Yes, you guys can white label it, but we want all the fees." And they say, "Okay." And then they white label it from us, and we leverage the fact that they are putting their whole effort behind it to onboard more capital into their, goals around Ether in terms of AUM targets and all of that stuff. And we sort of can just like sit back and enjoy the benefits of it. That is like actually literally how IPX ETH works.
Yeah. I'm waiting for typing. Cato sort of dashboard thing. So if anybody wants to spot us the money to get listed there, that would be sick. I think people are underestimating how expensive it is to get on there at the moment.
What is that? What are they talking about?
So you know how like projects get listed on the Cato dashboard thing? So like if you are not listed by them by their own decision, like you have to pay to get listed on there. And I don't think it's cheap at all. According to the last numbers I heard.
I don't think Cato is going to be a thing after like next week.
Yeah.
But I guess if it is, like, we can continue to look into it. But like, I don't think Kaido is a thing next week.
Yeah. Cool. And then final thing, like I mentioned a second ago, so rev sharing has begun for PXETH. Hold on, one more question about marketing. Ads on X. So no, ads on X are not worth it, most for two reasons. One is that crypto ads are very hard to get approved for anything in general on sort of like crypto or on non-crypto native outlets. You can often get like banned and things like that. And then for the X ads, I think like, I don't know, it's hard to justify whenever a lot of like scams promote on there through their ads. So I think there's a lot to be desired on the like traditional ad venue perspective, but maybe there's other stuff like CoinGecko and whatnot that we can look into.
Yeah, we are, like, you guys might have seen some of the research partners that we're also working with. Those have been put in front of so many different users. It's unbelievable. I think it's one of the big reasons for actually that big uptick in users. And like I said, it's always a journey to just like how we can like learn and practice, master like the craft of translating those people into new token buyers. Obviously, like, you guys know that that's what we're doing. And, for example, the reflexivity research piece that came out on us, the first one went in front of the Bloomberg terminal again, as well as like CoinMarketCap's newsletter, which has over, 500,000 subscribers or something, Colton? And things like that are starting to like work out really well for us in terms of getting out of this little like echo bubble that we live in. And I think we're going to continue to do more stuff like that. We're going to continue to do more stuff like that. We're going to continue to take the feedback that the centralized exchange gave us to like have a better chance at listing. The good news is that like, we're not going into this blind anymore. We have all the feedback we need to like come back again and make it successful this time. And we have the products live, right? I think a lot of people were like, like assuming that IPX ETH was like never going to launch or something, or I mean, I don't blame anyone who thought that. It took a while, but like, I think all the things that like were promised have been like delivered now. Buybacks are out, new marketing rollouts are out with new distribution strategies with like CoinMarketCap and Bloomberg and all these other places that are most relevant to us, as well as like new channels, and as well as like IPX ETH actually being live. And while it's small now, next week it's not going to be small. So, well, actually, one thing I've learned from IPX ETH rollouts is to not say next week. So hopefully next week it's not small. But yeah.
Yeah. No times on IPX. So finally, last thing is that rev share for PXETH has finally begun. I think it was included in this week's sort of staked Dinero distributions, and so everybody can start to track those going forward. Yes, okay. So Funky, do you want to describe how the distribution works so people don't ask us?
Yeah, so we announced that this week's distribution included some of the buyback from the revenue from PXETH. The way that it works is that a lot of the costs that we incur for things like AWS or Peer 2 or Cubase, for example, they're kind of like on a monthly basis. So we're doing the calculations on a monthly basis, and then we do the buybacks using a TWAP, and then we're distributing the Dinero that's bought back from the PXETH net revenue on a 4-weekly basis. So what we saw recently was 1/4 of what we've been generating.
So that answers that. No more wait for PXETH rev share, and that is underway. And like I said in the post, I think we are one of the first, at least large ETH LSTs to share fees with tokens. So we made it longer than I thought we might. So I think we are at a good spot to wrap it up and get back to work and see what happens with all of this Bybit stuff. So thanks everybody for taking the time to come hang out. Enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Good? All right. Peace.
Thanks, everyone.